welcome to Brand Your Passion, the show that helps you turn the thing you love the most into something that people know and love you for. I'm your host, Holly Arnett, the brand coach for creatives, and I'm on a mission to make the world a more creative place, one brand at a time. If you're ready to get more eyes on your work, more dollars in your pocket, and more creativity in your life, you're in the right place. Welcome. Let's brand your passion. Hey everybody, and welcome back to this week's episode of Brand Your Passion. I'm here to talk to you this week about how to stop comparing your brand to those of other creatives, right? Because I don't know about you, but I know that it can be really, really easy to compare yourself to other people on social media, especially. There are so many other amazing, talented, wonderful creatives out there. And while it's, exciting to see them succeed and to own what they're doing, it's also kind of can be hard to see that sometimes if you feel like you're not quite there, or you want to be there, or they've got something you haven't, or whatever. I know that I have definitely experienced comparison, and it can be really hard to deal with and can kind of stop you from creating or from putting your work out there or from just owning who you are. And that is like my worst nightmare for you. I want you to feel really confident in yourself and not feel like you have to compare yourself to what anybody else is doing. So we're going to talk a bit about comparison today and how to, kind of stop doing that, or try to stop doing that, because I know it's not as easy always as just like stop comparing yourself. There is a little bit more to it than that, but hopefully I can help you this week to kind of reframe your thinking about comparison and comparing your brand to others. So as I said, comparison is happens all the time to a lot of creatives, but it's really sucky. It's something that you don't want to experience. Nobody wants to compare themselves to other people. And there is that kind of famous Theodore Roosevelt quote that says comparison is the thief of joy. And it's true, right? If you are comparing yourself to other creatives and feeling inferior or that you are behind or anything like that, then you're not going to be experiencing the full joy of creating. You're not going to be living in your best creative space. You're not going to be feeling excited to create. You're going to feel really demotivated and unexcited and feel a little bit like, what's the point? And trust me, I've been there. It really is the thief of joy, and that's not what you want as a creative, and it's not what I want for you either. What I do want for you is to be excited to create and to be excited for other people's success and to be really on top of and aware of your own success. So that's what we're going to dive into today. And I was reading about a theory called the Self-Discrepancy Theory. That's hard to say. And it was talking about how there are kind of three selves that we identify with. There's our actual self, so that's where we are at right now. There's our ideal self, that's where we want to be, and then there's our ought self, and that's what we think we ought to be based on society or what somebody else is doing or what somebody tells you that you should be. And aiming for an ideal self can be really motivating, right? If you're like, okay, I know that this is the vision I have for my life, or these are the goals that I have and I want to get there, it can be really, really motivating and awesome. But what comparing and social media does is kind of gives you an unrealistic expectation of what that ideal self should be, or kind of tells you what you ought to be, what your ought self should be. And that's going to leave you constantly dissatisfied, right? If you're setting these expectations based on what somebody else is doing or where somebody else is at, it's not going to be helpful. So what we're aiming for you to do is to be really, really satisfied with your actual self and be really happy and proud of your actual self and motivated by your ideal self, right? So not setting an unrealistic ideal self that's going to hurt you, but having an inspiring and motivating ideal self that you can work towards. So how do we do this? How are we going to reframe all of these different approaches that we have to comparison, right? So firstly, what you can do is really know and own who you are and what makes you different. We have all heard that phrase that's like, no one is you and that is your power. And it's so true, because I know it's easy to be like, oh, well, this person over here is doing what I do or talking about what I talk about, and they're maybe doing it better or bigger or whatever. And the thing is, like, yes, there are other people doing what you do, and there are other people talking about the same things you talk about. But the thing is, they don't do it like you do it. They don't talk about it like you talk about it. They don't have your voice. They don't have your experience. They don't have your story. They don't have your life. You have a unique perspective and a unique set of skills and a unique approach and a unique experience that makes you super different and amazing. And so it's really important to understand, like, who am I and what makes me different, so that you don't have to compare to anybody else. You know, like, I am different, and that's a good thing. There are like 101 brand strategists and coaches out there, and I follow a lot of them on Instagram because I just love collaborating with them and supporting them. But if I ever do find myself comparing to them, I have to remind myself that I'm different to them, right? Yes, this other person also does brand strategy or brand coaching, but I have a completely different audience to them. So they might be working with like big businesses. I'm not. I'm working specifically with creatives. I have a unique story and a unique set of experience that makes me different, right? I have my experience as a visual communications designer, as a branding designer. I've done UX and UI, which makes my approach different. Like, there's so much about who I am and what I've done that makes me different. And I also have different values and things that are important to me that are going to appeal to different people, right? So even though there are other people doing what I do it and talk about it and approach it in a completely different way for completely different people. And so I don't need to compare myself to that other brand strategist. I just know that it's fine. I'm doing something different to them. So I don't need to be doing what they're doing or saying what they're saying or approaching things how they're approaching, because that's not me. So what you can do is like list out all of those things that make you different and set you apart. So think about, what are my zones of genius? What about my personality makes me super different? What about my story and my experience is different from other people doing what I'm doing? And then just like list those things, sit in it, and realize what makes you different and why that's awesome, and that you don't have to compare yourself to somebody else. And I read this great quote by Shannon L. Adler that said that personality begins where comparison leaves off. Be unique, be memorable, be confident, and be proud. And that's what this point is all about. You want to know who you are, own your personality, and just be confident and proud in the things that make you different. Another thing that you can do is to focus on your vision. I read another quote that said, we won't be distracted by comparison if we are captivated by purpose, which is so true, right? I recently talked on the podcast about finding your passion and why that's so important and how to do that. Finding your vision, sorry, not your passion. I have also talked about that, but I talked recently about finding your vision, and this is why it's so important, right? It's part of why it's important, because when you do have a purpose and a vision to work towards, you kind of have this like tunnel vision and North Star to like go towards. That means that anything that's going past you, that anything that's happening on the sidelines that somebody else is doing is irrelevant, because you are like focused on your vision and working towards that, and nothing else matters. So for me, if I, start to compare myself to others, it's really helpful for me to remind myself, Holly, your vision is to make the world a more creative place, one brand at a time, right? So you don't have to compare yourself to what anybody else is doing, because if they are working towards the same mission as you, amazing. We're going to get there faster. We can do it together. Love that. And if they're working towards a different vision, that's also great, right? There's room for all of us. And I'm just here to focus on my vision to make the world a more creative place, one brand at a time. And that bit at the end is important to me, right? Like, I don't need to have 1 million subscribers or 1 million followers or making like millions of dollars. I just need to focus on one brand at a time. And that's all I need to worry about. That's all I need to focus on. So I don't need to compare myself to anybody else. I just need to focus on my vision and keep moving towards that. The third thing that you can do to kind of help in stopping the comparison is to think about the realities of like what you're comparing yourself to and who you're comparing yourself to and the brands you're comparing yourself to, right? So another quote that I saw is that you don't want to compare your beginning to somebody else's middle. So one part of this is about the timing, right? Is the person that you're comparing yourself to or the brand that you're comparing yourself to, are they like 3 years ahead of you? Did they start their business 3 years ago and you're only just starting yours now? Or have they been running a podcast for 3 years and you're just starting yours now? Or have they been selling and launching products for 10 years and you're in your second year? You know, like, think about the timing of what's going on and don't compare your beginning to somebody else's middle. It's also important to think about the other realities, like, do they have a massive team to support them? Do they have like a massive amount of privilege that helped them to get the opportunities that they have? Did they have a bunch of money saved up that they could invest in their business from the get-go, whereas you are starting from scratch? Like, all of these realities you have to think about. And I know it's really, really easy to let your emotions take over when you're scrolling social media and starting to compare yourself with others. And again, I've been there. But if you can, it's really helpful to think about the realities. And the reality is, a lot of the time you don't know what's going on or how they've got to where they've gotten. You only know the realities of your own situation. So don't stress about comparing yourself to somebody who's in a completely different place at a completely different time with completely different privileges and opportunities and networks and all of those different things. It's not useful to compare yourself that way. And another quote that I read said, don't compare your life to others. There's no comparison between the sun and the moon. They shine when it's their time. And I love that, right? Like, this other person you're comparing yourself to, they might be the sun and it's their turn to shine right now because that's just the time that it is. And then next it'll be your turn to shine. It'll be your time. So don't compare yourself to other people in different situations. Just think about where you are at. And really, when the emotions start spiraling, you can think about, okay, is it actually worthwhile me comparing myself to this person? Or if I think about it, are they like 5 years ahead of me? Or do they have all these extra people to support them, or whatever it is? The next point that I wanted to make is related to that, is to realize that social media really is a highlight reel. So when you're comparing your brand to someone else's brand, you're only seeing the best bits and like the wins they want to celebrate and the successes they've had. It's very rare, right, that people share their failures online. So you're only seeing the best bits of somebody's life and their business and their creativity, and you're comparing your like behind the scenes with someone else's highlight reel. So you see everything that goes on behind your own business and everything that goes on behind your own brand, but you're only seeing the highlights of somebody else's business and brand. So it's important to remember that social media is a highlight reel and that's all you're going to get. So don't worry about comparing yourself to other people's highlights, because that's all they're showing you. You're not seeing what's going on behind the scenes. You're not seeing that like maybe they've just had like a really successful launch, but they spent more than they made during that launch. Anything like that. You just don't know what's going on behind the scenes. So remember that it's a highlight reel and you don't need to compare yourself to those just big wins that are shared all the time. Another thing that is really helpful and something that I really struggle with and have to be really intentional about is gratitude, right? So something that's going to help a lot with comparison is being really grateful for where you're at and owning that actual self, right? That we were talking about earlier. So you want to be intentional about writing down or taking note of or thinking about the things that you're grateful for that you have already, the things that you've achieved already, the things that you've sold or the things that you've made or whatever it is. Think about the things that you're grateful for now. And I've talked about this on the podcast before, but one of my strengths is I'm a future focused person, right? I'm always thinking about the future and what things are going to be like in the future and how I'm going to get there and how it's going to be amazing. So I very easily forget about okay, but what about right now and how awesome are the things that are going on right now? And so it can be really easy to compare yourself to where other people are at if you are not focused on where you're at right now and how awesome that is, right? So even this morning, I wrote down in my journal a full page of things that I'm celebrating that I've achieved this month, because there are so many things that were amazing this month, but because I'm so focused on the next month and all of that stuff, it's easy to forget those things. So even just something like that, writing in your journal every day or every week or every month or whatever, and focusing on what you've achieved already and how amazing that is, that's going to be really, really powerful in you just being able to be I don't need to compare myself to somebody else. Look at all this awesome stuff I've already done. I'm nailing it. And if you need somebody to kind of hype you up and do that for you, I'm always happy to do that. And we do that in the club all the time. I'm always what are you celebrating this week? What are your wins? Let's celebrate. Make sure you're being aware of what you've done this week and how amazing that is. So always happy to do that with you. Another thing that you can do is to try and turn your comparison into celebration. So I am a big believer in community over competition, and I love being creative's biggest cheerleader. It's one of my values as a brand and as a person, and I just love cheering people along, and it makes it way easier and less likely that I'm going to compare myself to other people if I'm just so happy for them. I turn my comparison into celebration, and I'm if I see somebody had this amazing launch, instead of being oh my God, I wish I could do that, or I'm never going to get there, or I can't believe they did that and I haven't. Instead, I'm oh my God, I love that they did that. That is so good and amazing, and what a great testament to our industry that people can make heaps of money out of their art and they can share their art with millions of people. I'm just celebrating that. And it's also a great reminder that, okay, that person has done that. If they can do that, then I can. If an artist can sell paintings for hundreds of $1,000s, then I can. Or I'm not an artist in that way, so that's not going to happen for me. But, if you're an artist that way and that's what you want to do and you see somebody else doing that, take it as testament that it's possible, right? That if they can do it, you can do it. It's inspiration. It's great. Another person's success does not mean the absence of your own. It doesn't mean that because this person has succeeded, you can't, or you never can. You can, you will, and it might be in the same way, it might be in a completely different way. There's room for everybody, and you can, instead of comparing yourself, try and celebrate that person and celebrate what that means for your industry, what that means for all creatives, so it's a really helpful way to reframe that. And also, lastly, you can think about comparing yourself to yourself. Instead of comparing yourself to anybody else and where they're at and where they're going and where they've been and whatever, compare yourself with who you were a month ago or a year ago, and where you want to go, right? That's what's going to help you to improve and move towards that ideal self that you want to move towards, and encourage yourself and motivate yourself. And if you look back, like there's a quote that always floats around Instagram. I'm not going to remember what it is exactly, but it's something like, if the you a year ago saw where you are right now, they would be so proud of you, or it's something like that. But think about like, okay, where was I a month ago? Have I improved from then, or have I moved forward from then, or what are the achievements that I've made since then? And comparing yourself to yourself, not anybody else, not what anybody else is doing, not what anybody else is focusing on, not what anybody else has achieved, but how far have I come? What have I done? What have I achieved? What progress have I made? And what can I be proud of myself for since then? So those are my kind of key tips for trying to stop comparing yourself to other brands. I know, like I said, that it's easier said than done, but hopefully some of these practices, like practicing gratitude, celebrating other creatives, thinking about the realities of people's successes and things, remembering that Instagram and social media is a highlight reel, knowing the things that make you super different and amazing and talented and wonderful, and focusing on your vision. These things hopefully will really help you to start reframing the way that you look at yourself in comparison to other people, and looking at those other people as well. And I just wanted to leave you with one more quote. I was very quote happy in this episode, but I hope they've all been inspiring. But I love this quote from Zenshin, which says, "A flower does not think of competing with the flower next to it. It just blooms." And that's what I want for you. I just want you to bloom and shine and grow on your own with all of these wonderful, beautiful flowers around you doing the same thing. So that is my hope for you, and I hope you have really enjoyed this episode. Let me know, obviously, if you have gotten anything out of it. You can always tag me or DM me on social media, and you can leave a review if you haven't already. But otherwise, hope you've loved this episode. Can't wait to see you owning your magical self, and I'll see you in the next one. Thanks for listening to this episode of Brand Your Passion and choosing to spend some time with me learning about branding, business, and all things creativity. You can find more episodes just like this one at blackandwhitestudios.nz/brandyourpassion. If you liked this one, you can tap that subscribe button so that you're notified about every new episode. And if you've got a spare second, I would love it if you could leave a review on iTunes or wherever you're listening to this podcast right now. I would love to hear from you and hear about how you're enjoying the podcast. If there were some helpful goodies in this episode for you, it would mean the world to me if you could screenshot your podcast player on your phone right now, hop over to Instagram or Twitter and tag me at Black and White Studios. That's at BLCKWHT Studios. By subscribing and reviewing and sharing, you're helping me to reach more creators just like you so that together we can make the world a more creative place, one brand at a time. I really can't achieve this mission without you, so your support means the world. I'll talk to you in the next episode, but until then, keep creating.